Welcome to Starspeak with astrologer Maureen Richmond. Here's where you'll find the latest news on what's up with the heavens. Looking for the inner message from outer space? This is your place. So join me in welcoming your host, astrologer Maureen Richmond.
Welcome, star friends. I'm Maureen Richmond, and you're listening to Starspeak on the UNX Digital Broadcasting Network, your source for everything paranormal, supernatural, and ufological. Starspeak airs right here every Monday night at 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, and 5 Pacific. If you're looking for the inner message from outer space, you're in the right place. So sit back and get ready for a tour through the zodiac and to the stars beyond. Yes, today's date is Monday, July 24, the year 2023. And do I have a show for you tonight? We're going to get into a lot of interesting topics. As always, I'll cover the material in 4 divisions. First, the inner workings of astrology. Tonight, don't just believe, study and perceive. We'll be looking at the workings of the monthly lunar cycle and how you can run your own little scientific experiment to determine whether the indications of astrology are real or not. Second, feeling the energies. Tonight, we'll look at the difference between the really very challenging Mars-Saturn opposition that affected us all on the level of consciousness last week, and the much milder influence that we have this week coming from Venus, which is now retrograde. Number 3, the astrology of ufology. Tonight, we'll take a look at 5 historical UFO encounters which occurred when Venus was retrograde. And number 4, we'll look at the long-term trends for the evolution of human consciousness, contact with UFOs and ET, disclosure, and breakthroughs to higher dimensions through the lens of the passage of Uranus through Taurus in the years 2018 through 2025. I'll be right back with more on the inner workings of astrology. Star friends, you know, in my 40 years of studying and counseling in astrology, I heard a lot of comments aimed at me about astrology. You can imagine. Oftentimes people will say, why should I believe in astrology? Or maybe they'll even say, why should I follow astrology? To those 2 questions, I would say, neither. Don't do either. You should study it and see what there is to find out. You know, we're in the age of information and enlightenment. It's important for everybody to do their own thinking, right? So I don't ask of anyone blind faith in the pronouncements of astrology. I myself find it much more exciting to watch what the phenomenon are in the astrological sense and correlate it with happenings in human experience. That's what I've been doing for the last 40 years. So tonight, I'm going to invite you into a little scientific experiment, which you can do in the space of a month's time, actually less, to see what you think. A personal scientific experiment in the science of consciousness. Why do I say science of consciousness? Well, because that's really where astrology operates. Yeah. Astrology operates and influences people at the level of consciousness. Astrology does not posit any gravitational influence to account for the reason why it describes anything relevant to human experience. It doesn't, not gravitational. So what does it connect to? It connects to our psyches. Why, you might ask? Well, for the simple reason that the manifested universe is all linked together and connected and existing in a field of unification. One thing is not starkly divided from another. Everything is influencing all the other things. It's an interactive field of energies. That's why. So let's take a look at the lunar cycle and see how that affects us. Back in the 20th century, there was a very famous astrologer by the name of Dane Rudhyar, Rudhyar, Dane, Dane, Rudhyar, Rudhyar, and you could look him up if you want. He's written a number of books. He was a transpersonal astrologer, meaning his focus in the study of astrology was to help people understand, connect with, and live their higher purposes for incarnating as souls in human bodies on this earth. There are other kinds of astrology. There's financial astrology, there's relocational astrology, there's horary and electional. They all have purposes, but transpersonal is different. It's about understanding oneself as a soul, going through a specific life plan, and a creative process as a result. Dane Rudhyar felt that the creative process happening in the human psyche was intimately connected to the monthly lunar cycles. And he said that he had observed and was convinced that it was so, that at the new moon, it's a deep resting phase, as if we're in a profound sleep state or even a trance. And at that time, deep in the subconscious, we receive from the higher realms of self and the universe and the divine creative process, which is all one and the same thing, new ideas or impetus to creative activity within our own realms. We receive a new spark, a new thought, a new idea, a new inspiration, a picture of something that we can attain or be interested in or follow out for a specific purpose, which is lodged deeply in our souls. Then he says at the full moon, which is 2 weeks later, that hidden, secret, cloaked purpose that was barely sensed or known at the new moon becomes obvious and evident and presented for the individual to see, just as does the light of the moon move from the complete darkness at new moon to full illumination at the full moon, to complete silvery luminescence pouring over the landscape and making night as if it were day in some cases. Yeah. So that's the basic rhythm there between sleep and the unconscious at the new moon and full enlightenment or realization at the full moon. Sleep or death and reception of the new idea at the new moon, the dark of the moon, when we don't see any moon, and the complete realization of the new creative idea at the full moon, when we have all the silver brilliance of Lady Luna at night. In between those two phases happen to be the square of the moon to the sun position at each one of those positions, and they have a purpose or meaning as well. Both of those are part of this 4-step process. And here is how Dane Rudhyar saw it. At the new moon, it's a crisis of inspiration. At the second quarter, or the waxing square of the moon to the sun in the zodiac, it's a crisis of action. At the full moon, it's a crisis of illumination. And at the waning square, when the moon again squares the zodiacal position of the sun a week later after full moon, is a crisis of understanding that whole cycle. So we're in one of those cycles. The new moon was last Monday. It occurred at 1:32 p.m. Central Time on Monday, July 17. The waxing square occurs tomorrow. So technically, we're still in that first quarter phase right now of receiving the new inspiration, idea, concept, or impulse to creativity, whether that's in an artistic sense or any other sense. We're still in that phase. Then tomorrow, the energy shifts. Tuesday, July 25 at 5:07 p.m. Central Time. The moon in Scorpio squares the sun in Leo, and that will be the crisis of action. It begins right there, the crisis of action, doing something about and with the inspiration that was received on Monday, July 17, around 1:32 p.m. in the afternoon or shortly thereafter. Yes, you need these times so you can do your little scientific experiment and see what's going on with your process. All right, so we have the waxing square on Tuesday, July 25. Then all the energies of nature and psyche lift up and increase and intensify and speed up everything to the full moon experience, which is Tuesday, August 1, with the exact opposition of the sun and moon shaping up at 1:32 p.m. again, exactly Central Time, when the sun is located at 9 degrees of Leo and the moon at 9 degrees of Aquarius. That will be our crisis of illumination, and that runs for several days. Then finally, we have the waning square, which is the crisis of understanding, and we look back on the entire 3 weeks previous to gather and integrate whatever it was all about for each one of us. And that step or stage takes place on Tuesday, August 8 at 5:28 a.m. Central Time, when the moon is 15 degrees of Taurus, square the sun at 15 Leo. So there are your 4 points in time to watch and observe your own psychological or psychospiritual or creative process that you're working with now. And that concerns whatever issues or desires or hopes you may have for yourself. Sometimes people actually even have specific dreams during sleep time around the new moon, which are predictive and relate to this entire process. Of course, one's dreams are always a rich source of understanding, and the imagery which comes directly out of the subconscious oftentimes speaks to us very eloquently. Indeed, it is the deep subconscious that's speaking to us through the lunar cycle. The moon itself, of course, is the lady of the night, of sleep time, and she refers to dreams, trance, altered states of consciousness, and the connection with the deep subconscious or other mind within ourselves that oftentimes knows a great deal more than the conscious or the waking self. So this is your experiment that you can do for the next few weeks. The lunar cycle, as interpreted by 20th century astrologer Dane Rudhyar and applied to today's experience. I'll be right back with more on feeling the energies. Welcome, star friends. I'm Maureen Richmond, and you're listening to Starspeak. Tonight, I want to focus on and clarify and bring our thoughts to the difference between what we experienced last week and what we're likely to experience this week. Last week was a real astrological challenge for everybody and anybody. We had some of the most powerful influences all stacked up in about 4 days' time. That's fairly unusual. The planet Mars opposed the planet Saturn, which means they're on opposite sides of the Earth on Thursday, Friday. The Sun and Pluto were in opposed position. That means one was on one side of the Earth, on the other, generating tension also. Then Venus turned retrograde on Saturday night, and on Sunday, Mercury squared Uranus. If that's not a formula sure to translate into some upset human emotions and disturbed feelings, I don't know what would be. The strongest influence in the bunch, of course, was the Mars-Saturn opposition. And Mars' individual effort, Saturn limitations, constrictions, and obstacles. So a lot of people found themselves in situations in which they were facing some kind of very securely closed door, some path that would not allow them to go down, endings, calling a halt to an activity. All were common with Mars opposite Saturn. And some people just experienced this inwardly, not in the outer world, but inwardly, with a sense of frustration, pressure, a sense of defeat, a sense of not being able to do anything significant or meaningful or worthwhile. It was a difficult impact. It really was. I would say it was fairly harsh, actually. It caused many people to face hard, cold truths. We will get past this, but it was strong. And then the following influences intensified it and translated into, in many cases, misunderstandings between people, frayed nerves, impatience, especially with that Mercury-Uranus square on Sunday, breaks in relationships, disturbances in the human social sphere, and all kinds of things of that nature. Mercury square Uranus on Sunday indicated an interruption of usual communication channels. So all in all, it was a trying circumstance. Those energies were there for a reason, and there was something for us to learn in that process, most definitely. Nature, the universe, the intelligence of the universe, all were telling us there's some area you're trying to go into that I don't want you going into. It's not going to work. It's not for your highest good. I want you to stop right now, back up, turn around, go the other way. And I've got something for you next week that I think is going to work out a lot better. Yeah, that would have been the wrap. This week, it comes from the fact that Venus turned retrograde this past week, and it will stay that way for about a little bit more than a month. And it's a different energy. This week, that retrograde Venus is the main factor that's emphasizing us, as on Thursday this week, we will have Mercury conjunct retrograde Venus, and it will really, that arrangement will really bring out the power of retrograde Venus. Well, who and what is Venus as an astrological influence? Well, the symbolism flows from the Greek Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, love, comfort, social graces, the arts, sophistication, pleasantry. Yeah, Venus is all about that stuff. So the retrograde condition of Venus oftentimes intensifies it, believe it or not. It certainly seems to draw the theme towards us more. So that's what we have looking at us coming this particular week. Now, of course, we're still in the waxing phase of the lunar cycle as well, which means our mental, physical, and intellectual energy, mental, physical, and emotional energies are on the rebound from the low point, which occurred on the weekend right before the new moon. So that would have been the 15th and the 16th of July. That was the low point. Then there was the new moon on the 17th, and we're still rebounding, gathering our wits, pulling together our understanding, and getting remotivated after that deep, resting low point, which always precedes the new moon moment. So we're on the rebound, we're on the mend. We've got something in front of us to do. We see it, and we feel like we've got the energy, and we can apply ourselves. So that's good. Thursday, July 27, Mercury and Venus now retrograde Mercury and retrograde Venus conjoin at the 28th degree of Leo. Leo is a sign of confidence, outgoing energy, celebration of life, artistic capacity, and the willingness to take risks sometimes in new and exciting endeavors. So we've got something coming that's perhaps unexpected and a little bit more cheerful than what we experienced last week with that rather harsh Mars-Saturn opposition and being told that, we don't need you now. If we do, we'll call you later, but don't hold your breath, sort of thing. Difficult to say the very least. Also this week, if you want to know more about the Mercury conjunction with retrograde Venus, here's another little scientific experiment to do for yourself. Observe what happens between 4 and 5 p.m. Central Time on Thursday. That's right, Thursday, July 27. You might want to write this down. 4 to 5 p.m. Central Time. Adjust that time if you're in a different time zone. Observe what happens within your own thinking and your own experience or the world around you, and you'll get a clarity about the meaning of retrograde Venus, because the moon in Scorpio will precisely square, neatly defining, the Mercury-Venus conjunction at that time. When again? Thursday afternoon, July 27, 4 to 5 p.m. Central Time. Going later into the week, farther down into the week, there's Friday, which is a little bit of a revisitation of what we experienced last week with the Mars-Saturn opposition. It won't be as strong, but a little reminder of what that was all about when the moon squares Saturn and Mars from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Friday, July 28th. That's the entirety of the business day, just about there, at least in the central time zone. So, it could be a bit of a downer, but we will get past it. What can you do about it? Stay focused on what's constructive for you, that you have control of, where you can make a personal difference. Now, here's some good news. On the weekend, there is an extended period of serenity, peace, and settled emotional energies, allowing us all to get organized and focused on what is important for us to do right now. And that starts around 10 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, the 29th of July, and runs all the way to 9 p.m. Central on Sunday, July 30, 9 p.m. Central Time. So it's late on Saturday night to not quite so late on Sunday night Central Time this weekend. The moon will be in practical Capricorn, making a trine to Mercury in Virgo, a sextile to Saturn in Pisces, a trine to Mars in Virgo, and a trine to Jupiter in Taurus. So there are 3 earth sign trines in the bunch, suggesting that period of time will bring everyone opportunities to get physically organized, calm down, relax, figure out what priorities should be, and summon up the necessary energy to pursue those priorities. I'll be right back in a moment with segment 3, the Astrology of Ufology.
This is Margie Kay inviting you to check out the latest edition of Onyx News Magazine with thought-provoking articles about UFOs, extraterrestrials, cryptids, consciousness, and amazing photos of anomalous objects and more. And there's always a feature article by our managing editor, Lee Spiegel. Get a free digital issue with your free subscription to the Onyx Network, or get a printed copy with your X Club Gold subscription in the U.S. Visit onyxnetwork.com to see details. That's onyxnetwork.com.
Welcome back, Star Friends. I'm Maureen Richmond, and you're listening to Starspeak. Today's date is Monday, July 24, the year 2023. And for the next few minutes, I'll be talking to you about some historical UFO encounters which occurred under astrological influences quite similar to what we're experiencing right now, here, today. That's right. If you listened to segment 2, you know that just this past weekend, the planet Venus, from the Earth's perspective, moved into a retrograde motion. So that's a condition that happens in the solar system, from our point of view, about once every 18 months. So not all the time. And once it does happen, it persists for 40 to 43 days. So as you can see, Venus retrograde is an identifiable situation astrologically. It doesn't just happen all of the time, not at all. It's kind of rare, and it does stand out. When Venus was retrograde in October of 1978, an interesting UFO encounter occurred. And it's interesting for a lot of different reasons. Before I talk about it, let's recall what Venus is all about. It gets its characteristics from the Greek goddess Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, art, celebration, and pleasantry. Venus values or characteristics are very much involved with beautification, artwork, embellishment, the creation of calming or interesting artistic circumstances and environments. It's an art-oriented kind of energy. A lot of artists have very strong Venus influences in their chart. I can think of one that I know of who has the Sun in Capricorn conjunct Venus in Capricorn, and she is an enormously talented painter. She knows who she is. She might be listening. Yeah, that's you, Capricorn, Sun, Venus conjunction. So, the world of art. Well, in October of 1978, believe it or not, the Chinese military, that's right, China, the Chinese military was holding an outdoor movie screening for several hundred military personnel. An outdoor movie for their recreation and enjoyment. Not a propaganda indoctrination, but something for an evening's entertainment, a definite Venus value. And while these several hundred military personnel were sitting out observing this film, what should occur but an enormous triangular craft which hovered over their viewing area and nearby for a good period of time, but they were able to watch it. So isn't that interesting? With Lady Venus emphasized by virtue of being retrograde, the UFO encounter occurs in the context of entertainment. Now, Venus values played into yet another UFO encounter in 1986, on the 17th of November, to be precise. That was the date of the famous Japan Airlines encounter, which occurred in airspace near or over Anchorage, Alaska. The JAL plane was carrying, of all things, a certain rare or highly expensive type of wine. Yeah, that was what their cargo was. Wine, something that people would use in social situations to increase their comfort and their relaxation and enjoy pleasantry, and food and drink, which are also connected to Venus as a comfort factor. Carrying that wine, these two Japanese pilots had a very dramatic encounter with a luminous object that persisted and moved around their plane and had them befuddled and bewildered for a good long period of time. And they reported it when they landed. Actually, they reported it while it was happening and then while it landed. And that became a big issue of discussion around the world and for those individual pilots. Venus retrograde. And for sightings 4 and 5, let me mention to you that on October 20th, the year 2002, there were 2 UFO encounters close by on the east coast of the United States. One was in a small town in Pennsylvania, and the other was in Albany, New York, which is the capital of that state. Both of those encounters involved accidental capture of a UFO by photography. On the small town situation, it was a disc-shaped UFO, which was caught by a still camera photographer, the type of artist indeed. And in Albany, it was a different situation. It was a UFO footage caught by a TV news station team accidentally. Later on, it was discovered to be there. So if photography and cinematography can be considered part of the arts, well, then there's your Venus theme reflected in these 2 encounters. And we've got Venus retrograde right now, so who knows what might happen. You don't want to stay active, keep your cameras pointed to the sky and your eyes pointed to the sky as well. I've done it again. There we go. Now for our figure in ufology. This week, I'm focusing on United States Representative Tim Burchett. Tim Burchett, right. Because he's in the limelight this week as the lead instigator of the July 26 hearings in a subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee on UAP, UFO, and the budgeting situation that surrounds that question. Now, Tim Burchett himself was born on August 20. There he is. That's Tim right there in his congressional picture, his official portrait as a United States representative. He was born August 25, 1964. That makes him a sun sign Virgo. That's right. His moon is somewhere in early Aries. One can't be sure until a birth time is known. And right now, there's just a birth date, which is available on Wikipedia and other sources. Birthday, August 25, 1964. The sun is in Virgo. Mercury is in Virgo on the date of his birth, and it's retrograde, which is unusual. Only about 25% of the people on the face of the earth have retrograde Mercury. We're around. I've got it. It's retrograde in my chart, so it's not like we don't exist or we're aliens or something, as far as I know. But it's still a minority of people. And we tend to approach issues, problems, questions, the creation of solutions, investigation a little bit differently than the, shall we say, the majority mind. The retrograde Mercury people tend to go a different direction, shall we say, oftentimes being very headstrong or independent in their thinking. And certainly Representative Tim Burchett has shown that characteristic. He's given a number of spirited interviews defending his interest in this question against all attacks and criticisms that have been aimed at him. Burchett was, for many years before he was in the United States Congress, an elected official at the municipal and state levels in the area of Knoxville, Tennessee. To me, this is interesting because of the emphasis on Virgo, the sign of service, in his astrology. He has the sun and Mercury in Virgo, and also Uranus and Pluto. He was born during the mid-1960s when Uranus and Pluto were together in Virgo. That was a very historic and influential period of time for a lot of different reasons. He was born during that period. So he has Uranus conjunct Pluto in his own natal chart with the retrograde Mercury influence and many other positions. But for tonight, we'll just focus on that. Interestingly, as this hearing comes up this week on Wednesday, July 26th, and the world is watching because this is such an important development to have happening in Congress, the planet Mars by transit will be 10 degrees of Virgo, precisely activating the Uranus position of Tim Burchett. So that doesn't happen all the time. It happens once every 2 years, and it's happening right with a point in time where he takes a leading role in the field of UFO, UAP investigation. The planet Uranus, which is the planet that's being activated in his chart, is emphasized in the natal astrology of all kinds of important figures in ufology, including J. Allen Hynek, George Adamski, Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan, Stephen Greer, and Jacques Vallée. And I'm sure there are even more than that. So it's a planetary energy and symbolism that's uniquely connected with an ability to understand realities that transcend the physical dimension. Yes, and so that's part of that part of Tim Burchett's astrology is being strongly activated on Wednesday, July 26th, with Mars transiting Mars position where it is right now, 10 degrees Virgo on that day, precisely conjunct his natal Uranus at 10 degrees of Virgo also. Well, I think we're up on a break here, so I'll be right back with more on long-term predictions for the important questions that star friends are interested in. Welcome back. I'm Maureen Richmond, and this is Starspeak. For the next few moments, let's place our attention on times ahead and the possibilities for the evolution of human consciousness, contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, UFOs, and the like, for disclosure, the world around, and the possibility for breakthroughs to higher dimensions in our own personal experiences. Many astrological influences bear on these questions. Remember from episode 3, the idea of the many layers of astrological influence? They're all relevant. For tonight, I want to focus on just one, the passage of planet Uranus through that part of the zodiac we call Taurus. Uranus in Taurus. The planet Uranus takes about 7 years to get through an astrological sign all the time. And that's how long it will be in Taurus. From May 2018 through June 2025. About 7 years there. May 2018 through June 2025. That's the period of time that Uranus moves through the segment of the ecliptic or the zodiac, which we call Taurus. What we can expect during that time is that the action of Uranus with its nature on the field of Taurus. The field of Taurus is the earth sign territory, stability, predictability, financial security, routine, comfort, relaxation, certainty of what's going to happen tomorrow. It's really kind of, set in its ways sometimes, the Taurus influence. Yes, it can be. Well, here comes Uranus in Taurus. What do you think Uranus is all about? None of that stuff. As a matter of fact, it's a disruptor of the status quo. Discovered in the late 1700s, it relates to all kinds of modern technology and innovative ways of thinking and doing. It's a planet of democratic rebellions that occurred around the period of time that it was discovered. It has to do with individual freedom, the capacity to think outside of the box, to reject the official narrative or the paradigm, and to question everything, including science and art and politics and education and human relationships and who knows what else, Uranus does its own thing. So that's the power that we've got working on this other field up here of Taurus. It likes everything steady and predictable and comfortable, and don't rock the boat. Uranus rocks the boat. So what does it do? It changes the methodology by which funds are transferred. It changes a sense of where security comes from. People don't really enjoy that kind of event. But this happens once every 84 years, and we had Uranus and Taurus in the 1930s, and people lived through it. Yes, they did. And many of them came out with specialized skills and talents in creating wealth and prosperity on the basis of their unique skill sets. So that can happen to us again now. But on the way, there are a lot of alternative paths that are going to be really, I think, rather forcibly shown to us, rather forcibly offered to us, rather, shall we say, injected into human consciousness. And it appears to me that what this is doing in the realm of disclosure and UFO studies is it's part of forcing this inquiry into the funding structure, which has upheld the secrecy about UFOs and the camouflage of the whole question for decades and decades and decades, about 70 years. So it's forcing a reanalysis. It's breaking open the dark places and the resistance and the closed doors and the concreted over windows, and exploding that level of protection and concealment that existed before, and will continue to do so through June of 2025. Certainly at this point, operating in that direction. You notice that Uranus and Taurus started shortly after the most recent round of questioning Pentagon budgeting, which began in late 2017. So there you have it. Now, what's ahead? In the year 2024, something really very dramatic is likely to occur. Uranus will still be in the sign of Taurus, and it shall have worked its way up to the 22nd degree of Taurus. Guess what? So also is the planet Jupiter. It's already in Taurus, but it's not close enough to be in a conjunction with Uranus right now. It will be in early 2024. In fact, late April of 2024, Jupiter and Uranus simultaneously reach the 22nd degree of Taurus, forming a powerful conjunction. Jupiter conjunct Uranus at 22 degrees of Taurus. Now, those two planets come together in the zodiac once every 14 years. It doesn't happen all the time. It's fairly powerful. And when Jupiter does conjoin with Uranus astrologically, it intensifies, amplifies, exaggerates the key characteristics that Uranus has all the time anyway. So it just really exaggerates that whole thing, makes it even bigger, obvious, and evident. So what is Uranus and Taurus all about? Well, those financial realignments just described, and the business of looking into off-budget spending or black budgets, unknown federal expenditures, breaking into that territory. What is therefore likely to happen in April 2024 is a much more dramatic chapter of what we're even seeing right now. Yeah. And that's not all either, because that month is packed with extraordinary astrological happenings. Yes, you heard correctly. April 2024 is packed with extraordinary astrological happenings. On April 8th, there will be a total solar eclipse. And at the same time, Mercury will be retrograde and conjunct the sun. Then you have the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, and there's one more. Mars and Saturn will conjoin at the 15th degree of Pisces. All of that inside of 1 month. That is going to be a really unusual set of circumstances, which will be translated into developments into our world. What's the mechanism of translation? Well, human consciousness, because these energies feed into human consciousness. That's where we experience it. What is human consciousness? Well, it's our thoughts. It's our beliefs. It's what's interesting to us, what we're pursuing, what we really believe to be true. What am I saying? That we get some of that from our systemic environment? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. Why should it be any other way? Are we distinct from our environment and not unified with it? Of course not. We're part and parcel of it. We are in a living system. And just like plants are in a living system, interacting with soil and water and air. We're in a living system when we are sensing and integrating the vibrational input of celestial beings around us all the time. They're going to have a big message to deliver in April of 2024. And so that period of time promises major developments in all these fields of activity that star friends think about so frequently, including the evolution of human consciousness. What could it be? Well, it's already happening, but it's likely to intensify the opening of human consciousness to the reality that intelligent life is not limited to one tiny solar system in this vast creation of life that we know with multiple galaxies everywhere and universes. Intelligent life is throughout the manifested universe, and the doors of perception are likely to be blasted open to that realization in April 2024. You know, the total solar eclipse is on April 8, 2024. Total solar eclipses have quite a history with UFO sightings. In 1991, when the International UFO Congress was meeting in Mexico City, it was during a total solar eclipse. And there was a mass sighting which occurred with an armada of UFOs passing over Mexico City during that period of time. That was during a total solar eclipse, right? So we've got another total solar eclipse coming with an emphasis on the UFO planet Uranus, while Mercury is retrograde and conjunct the sun, and Mars and Saturn are conjunct. And I can tell you from recent research, all of those conditions have been associated with significant encounters and sightings in UFO history. All of them, absolutely all of them. So the odds for some type of dramatic occurrence are high. Yes, for contact with ET and UFO intelligence, and for the further dismantling of the secrecy and concealment mechanism that has held so much important information from the public for all these decades. Yes, an even more dramatic dismantling of that mechanism. And finally, what are the prospects for our own personal breakthroughs to higher dimensions? They're very good. And how might we access those? Well, simply by being in our own places where we are. There's no need to do anything dramatic, though. If you would like to be in the path of totality for the eclipse, the state of Arkansas is where you can be during that time. For the path of totality runs from southwest Arkansas to northeast Arkansas and beyond on up into Kentucky and Illinois and other points north of here. Starts down in Texas, runs through Arkansas, and then goes northeast from there. So the state of Arkansas with its crystals, you can think about it. But you don't really need to do anything dramatic. You don't really need to do anything special. You just need to be in your own place, calm, relaxed, someplace that you enjoy, perhaps natural surroundings, and the energies will be completely available to you. Tonight we've looked at a lot. The lunar cycle and how you can work with it to understand your own creative process as a human being and as a work in progress as a manifesting soul. We looked at the difference between last week's energies and the much milder energies coming this week. We've seen how several UFO encounters occurred under retrograde Venus in the past. And we've taken a look at the personal astrology of the leading UFO investigator in Congress right now, Tim Burchett. Finally, we've seen tremendous indications that the year 2024 holds a lot of promise for all those hopes that we have. This is Maureen Richmond for Starspeak and the UNX Digital Broadcasting Network, saying good night. Thank you, Star friends, for tuning in and listening. I'll see you next week.